Hello everyone, welcome back to our Bible lessons. Today we are in week 2 of Esther, one of my favorite books of the Bible because it shows God's perfect timing. But the whole book doesn't mention God's name one time. Wow. Well, Esther, the obedient Jewish orphan, has just been chosen Queen of Persia. God has put her in the right place at the right time. You know, we need to trust that God will do that for us too. We can trust that He'll do that. Trust and obey, for there's no other way to be happy in Jesus but to trust and obey. That's what Esther did. You know, God also put Mordecai, that's her older cousin, who adopted her and raised her godly. And he happened to be just in the right place to overhear these two men. Their names are Bigthan and Teresh. And Bigthan and Teresh are doorkeepers for the king, King Ahasuerus, Esther's new husband. And these doorkeepers are mad. The Bible says wroth with the king, so much so that they're making a plan to kill him. And Mordecai overhears the plan. So what's the first thing he does? Well, he goes right and tells Esther. And then Esther goes to her husband, the king, and tells him. And you know what happened to Bigthan and Teresh? The Bible says they were hung on a tree. And then the Bible mentions that the king had it written down in his records, the Chronicles it's called, that Mordecai saved the king's life. But you know what? Nothing was ever done for Mordecai for doing that. But we're going to find out God's perfect timing in the pages ahead in the book of Esther. Well, the king decides to choose a man to be his right-hand man, his big helper. And that man is called, his name is Haman. Now, the king also decided that whenever Haman would leave the palace and go outside, that everybody should bow down to him, just like they would the king. But Mordecai will not bow down. Oh, does this make Haman mad? He is really mad. And some of Mordecai's friends said, "How come you won't bow down?" And he said, "Because I serve God. I'm a Jew, and I worship God only." Well, Haman hates Mordecai because he won't bow down to him. Haman's a pretty proud man, and we're going to find he's an evil man too. And Haman decides he's going to get rid of Mordecai, and he finds out that he's a Jew. A Jew is God's people from Israel, the country of Israel. And so he decides his plan how to get rid of Mordecai. And he goes to the king, and he has a plan all figured out. And he tells the king, he says, "Oh, king," he says, "there are some people, certain people in your kingdom that have their own laws. And they don't obey your laws. So if it please the king, I want to get rid of them. Let's destroy them." Well, the king thought that was a good idea. So he gave Haman his ring. Now, this isn't a ring, but it's something like the idea that you can melt wax and then dip this in the wax, and it would stamp a stamp on there, and that was the king's signature. So Haman's got pretty big power now. He's got the king's signature. So he calls in a man to write the law. But the king doesn't know what the law says. And the law said, it's just awful. I told you Haman's a wicked man. It says on March 13th, kill all the Jews, young and old and women and children, and then you can take their things for yourself. Wow. And then he sent the law throughout the land with men with horses. They were called posts in the Bible. Makes me think of our post office, huh? And how we send out letters. And he sent it out, and the Bible says that the city of Shushan, that's the name of the city where the palace was, and it means the people there were shocked and perplexed and horrified to hear this law. And they were fearful and worried. And when Mordecai, he read the law, he went before the king's gate and he sat in sackcloth and ashes. That's what the Jews would do when they were really going to cry out to the Lord. And it says he cried with a loud and bitter cry at the king's gate. And then Esther was told that Mordecai was sitting out there in sackcloth and ashes. So she sent a man to find out what was wrong. And Mordecai told him about Haman's evil law to kill the Jews, and told Esther she must go before the king. Wow. Well, to go before the king when he hasn't called you first can be death, unless he holds out his golden scepter to you. Then you would be spared. So Esther sends a message back to Mordecai. And she says, all the king's servants and the people of the king's provinces do know that whosoever, whether man or woman, shall come into the king in the inner court who is not called, there is one law of his to put him to death, except such to whom the king hold out the golden scepter, that he may live. But I have not been called to come unto the king for these 30 days. So this man Hatak, he's been going back and forth between Esther and Mordecai. And he tells Mordecai what the queen said. And Mordecai said back to him, say to Esther, do you think you will escape death because you are the queen? And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? Wow. So Esther says to Mordecai, go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan, and fast and pray for me. Night and day for 3 days, don't eat or drink. And I and my maidens will do the same. Wow. So she says, if everybody will pray for me for 3 days, she says, so I will go unto the king, which is not according to the law. And if I perish, I perish. Perish means die. If I die, I'll die. Wow. Then the Bible goes on to say that on the 3rd day, that Esther put on her royal apparel and stood in the inner court of the king's house. And the king sat on his royal throne in the royal house. So there she is, 3 days after the fasting and praying, and she's ready to go before the king, and she could die. What courage she has. Wow. She is really trusting and obeying, isn't she? She is doing right. I think we'll sing our Do Right song right here. Wow, even though it could cause her life, she is obeying. From the very start, You must purpose in your heart to do what's right and never question why. Never count the cost, though everything seems lost. The price for doing right is sometimes high. Sure is for her, isn't it? Could be death. Do right till the stars fall. Do right till the last call. Do right when there's no one else to stand by you. Do right when you're all alone. Do right though it's never known. Do right since you love the Lord. Do right, do right. Right is always right, and wrong is always wrong, and we must learn to separate the two. If you love the right, the Lord will give you light. So seek the right in everything you do. Do right till the stars fall. Do right till the last call. Do right when there's no one else to stand by you. Do right when you're all alone. Do right though it's never known. Do right since you love the Lord. Do right, do right. Well, we sure learned from Esther that sometimes it takes courage to do right.